Welcome to this episode of the Rebel Podcast where we talk about edible flowers and how to enjoy them. Hey, it's Debradanielsen. My co-host Waylon Carney is here to join me today. And I got these amazing solar eclipse glasses. I cannot see anything. I can't see shapes. I can't see the teleprompter. So it just makes me wonder, how am I going to see the eclipse on Monday? Now, Warby Parker gave these out for free. I kind of like the vibe because I feel like I'm in a 1950s, movie where I'm going to have a 3D experience of a monster, but instead I can't see anything. So I'll take those off because today I'm so excited. We are finally celebrating spring here in the Midwest. It has been such a long, dark, cold winter this year. Now it's time to start thinking about our favorite outdoor activities like sporting events, picnics, and entertaining outside on the deck. Do you love to garden and see the flowers growing next to the beautiful tomato plants and just celebrating that? Knowing you can pick those tomatoes, and what about those edible flowers? Sweet pansies, peppery nasturtiums, and oh, one of my favorites are those beautiful tasting borage flowers. Borage tastes so fresh. Are you scared to eat flowers? A lot of people are. You need an expert advice. So today you can flaunt your knowledge of fine dining or demonstrate your next level of culinary skills. We're going to talk today to Renee from Renee's Gardening. Waylon and I will be interviewing her, and she is an expert who loves to cultivate only the best tasting flowers. You may have heard of her. She owns a great seed business called Renee's Garden. So excited to talk with her and hope she will share one of her edible flower recipes today on this episode of the Rebel Podcast. So pour yourself an iced tea and put some borage in it, borage ice cubes, and let's talk about edible flowers you can plant, you can grow in your garden, and then you can show off to your friends and family. You can find Renee's Garden online at reneesgarden.com, social media, Instagram, Pinterest, IG, and YouTube. So, welcome to the Rebel Podcast. We are about to start talking to our special guest today, and I think Waylon and I both are super excited to talk to Renee. Welcome to the show, Renee from Renee's Garden. We are so happy that you're with us today, and you're going to share your expert knowledge about edible flowers. So, yes, well, we are trying to have spring here, but we've gotten snow in the last week, and it's been
windy and cold.
20 degrees, I think.
Yeah.
It's just been, not very spring-like. But let's talk about something that makes us all feel good, and that's looking at beautiful flowers. And as you and I've been talking, I found it really fascinating that you said, yeah, there's a lot of edible flowers, but not all edible flowers taste good. So tell me what your favorite edible flowers are.
Right. Well, there's a big difference between the things that you can't eat. In other words, if you eat them, you won't get sick.
Right.
But the question is, are they worth eating? Which is always the first question I ask myself. So I kind of stick to actually using and enjoying flowers that actually have a little bit of interesting flavors. And I think some of the main ones that we should talk about are nasturtiums, which I think a lot of people know tastes like watercress with a touch of honey. And you just eat the petals, but you can eat the leaves. And they come in probably 12 colors. They're pretty easy to grow. You can grow them in a container or on the ground. And a lot of people know that they come in yellow, orange, and red, but they also come in cherry and apricot and cream and orange. There's a lot of different colors. There's climbing ones and sprawling ones. So that's one of the best edible flowers. And you can do all kinds of things, eat them in salads, eat them in pasta, make vinegar out of them. There's just lots of alternatives. And then another really good edible flower that people probably are familiar with in rose water and candied rose petals is roses are actually the petals of roses are actually edible. But of course, you'd want to make sure that you had grown it yourself and had
Right.
used no chemical pesticides. But they can be candied. You can make rose water. You can make rose petal jam. Calendulas are edible. They are a good substitute for anything where you want a lot of yellow color, and you can use them with cookies or in salads. They're really lovely. And cornflowers are edible. Forget-me-nots are edible. I'm just going to refer to my list here. Um, and I think one of the nicest ones to grow is just herb blossoms. Let's say you have some basil in your garden, or you have thyme in your garden, oregano, marjoram, chives, all those blossoms are edible and delicious if you pick just the blossoms and sprinkle them on salads or on top of pasta or as a garnish. And a lot of times people grow basil and it starts to flower and
Mm-hmm.
because like seed and they keep picking off the flowers, but they don't know that they can actually use the flowers. A really nice thing to do is get a bunch of, like the little Pepperidge Farm bread, cut off the crust, the little cocktail loaves. I think they still make those, or
Mm-hmm.
crackers. Make a spread like a cucumber cream cheese spread and put it on the crackers or little rounds of toast, and then sprinkle edible flowers or herb blossoms on top of that. Makes a really delicious, pretty dish for an appetizer.
That
So,
sounds wonderful,
What a
doesn't
great
it?
idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's simple.
um,
Yeah.
It's not
and
hard.
And using
yeah,
all
it's
parts of
not
the
hard.
plant
It's
too.
easy to do. Most of the edible flowers I've mentioned, you can use most easily just to decorate a salad. Just
Mm-hmm.
sprinkle the blossoms on top of it. I also want to mention violas, little Johnny jump ups, and
Mm-hmm.
pansies. And those are lovely decorations. You can also candy them. And the way you candy flowers is you pick the flowers and then you beat up an egg white till it's nice and frothy. And then you take a little art paintbrush and paint the flower with beaten egg white. And then you sprinkle it with superfine sugar. And then you put it in a cool, dry place and let them dry. And they'll keep for a very long time. That's what they do with violets as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use those for cakes and pastries and cookies, and they'll keep a very long time.
And they're
So
very
that's,
pretty to decorate or garnish a dish too.
Yeah, with a dessert or something.
Especially if
Yeah.
you're going to entertain and have friends and family come over and you just want to show off. I mean, how lovely is that? You can talk about how you painted your pansies or violas. Isn't that
Yeah, it's just like an
wonderful?
extra step that you can. Yeah,
I
that sounds
love it.
beautiful. Yeah.
well, using edible flowers is nothing new. People have been doing it for centuries because for a long time, and still often in many countries, people go out in the spring and look for wild greens that they
Hmm.
enjoy, kind of a tonic. That's actually how garden mescaline or mixed baby leaves got started. Was in early spring. People go out and look for wild leaves that are kind of a tonic, blood thinner after being cooped up all winter,
Oh.
Yep.
and that's when. So they eat both the leaves and the flowers. So, for example, arugula flowers are really delicious and they're quite pretty. And here's something a lot of people don't know. Some of my favorites to use are bean flowers, beans and pea flowers.
Really? Are those sweet?
They have a sweet flavor. They taste like beans or like peas, but a little sweeter. So they're
Hmm.
lovely garnishes to use on omelets or in skin and salads or whatever.
I bet children would like that better than if you put a bowl of green beans in front of them.
Yeah,
They
I know
might
I would
really
have.
gravitate to a sweeter but healthy alternative in
Yeah.
the flowers. So that's good to know. I didn't even think about that.
No, I would have never thought of that either.
Well, I have here a list of flowers that are edible that I could read to you if you like. I
Yes.
just highlights. By the way, another one that I actually use a lot is lavender.
Hmm.
I don't mean Spanish lavender, the one that's quite strong and oregano-like flavor. I mean true, what's often called English lavender, which are basically lavender angustifolia, are the sweet lavenders. And if you take a tablespoon of the florets of that, put it in a cup of sugar, and then put it in a like a mason jar full of sugar. The lavender will flavor the sugar, and then you
Ooh,
can bake with it.
how
Make
nice.
sure
Yeah.
that's nice, and you can do that with a lot of herbs, but lavender is one of my favorite. And you've probably seen lavender flavored honey or
Hmm.
lavender
Mhm.
flavored this or that. The trick with cooking with lavender is not to use a lot because it's very strong.
Hmm. It is. I actually put some on my pizza too. I love French herbs, and while I was living in France, I got so used to tasting lavender and smelling it every day because I think it pretty much grows wild there. But, it would just perfume the air. And then I bought some pizza herbs at one of the cooking stores there, and it had lavender in it. But it was like you're talking about, a very gentle, not overpowering flavor. And they use it sparingly, but it does add a unique taste to it. And it makes it really delicious, actually.
Well, it has that calming effect
It
too.
is calming.
Lavender. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, realistically, the amount of lavender you're going to use in a dish is probably not going to be medicinal, but it certainly tastes nice. And I usually just use the lavender flavor the sugar. You can also put a pinch of lavender in a cup of milk, and it will flavor the milk as well. It tastes something, I would use it at the same strength you used oregano.
That's a good idea because oregano can get a bit much too.
Hmm.
But in the pizza herbs, when it's mixed with the oregano and the thyme and the lavender, it just adds a unique,
Like an extra layer of flavor.
yeah, that's really kind of complimentary, but also very distinctive. And I just think it's wonderful. It's a wonderful change from just the typical all Italian
Basil,
seasoning.
oregano.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It adds another gourmet flavor to it. So that's a really good idea to put it in the milk too. I think that would be very refreshing.
Hmm.
You can also take some lavender trimmings and soak them and then put them on your grill and let the lavender smoke.
Mm.
Flavor lamb, particularly, is very nice.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
I'm going to absolutely try that because I love lamb, and my
Hmm.
husband puts a lot of fresh thyme and oregano from the garden, but I would like to see that, lavender flavor in there.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Once again, it's a strong flavor, so do not get carried away.
Right.
Less is,
Exactly.
less is
That's words of wisdom there. And
Hmm.
and I would definitely say yes. Also, you mentioned roses, and I just want to tell you one of the most beautiful flavored teas I ever had was in England. And we went for tea at high noon, and they had real rose tea made out of the rose hips. And then there were, flower petals too. But that was the most delicious tea I've ever had in my life. It was smooth, it was calming, and refreshing. So I'm glad you brought that up.
well, the most important thing with roses is you want to get extremely aromatic rose.
Hmm.
You want to have lots of it to get the essence. But the easiest thing to do again is to flavor some sugar and then use the sugar. Another edible flower that is an herb as well is borage, which
Hmm.
has little um, beautiful, bright, wonderful, deep blue little flowers that you pick off the plant, and those are wonderful to freeze in ice cubes and then put them in iced tea.
Hmm. And they have a really fresh cucumbery like flavor.
Yes,
And
and
I
they're in ice
think
salads,
I think
anything.
too that something that's really, really important anymore, Renee, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that as well. Everybody wants to plant things now that'll help the bees and help the butterflies. And I know in my garden, the borage is always one of a real favorite with the bees. And they're like lined up to get in on the flowers. It's just like amazing. And then the borage goes to seed and then it kind of reseeds itself. So maybe you can talk a little bit about any of these other edible flowers that really bring the bees around.
Well, I think all of them do. Herbs are I would go with herbs because their flowers attract many pollinators, not just bees, but solitary bee species and all other beneficial insects and butterflies. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that certainly borage is an early blooming flower
Mm-hmm.
and therefore can really help the bees in the days before a lot is blooming. Cornflowers are also edible. They don't have that much flavor, but if you want to pick the petals and decorate with them, you can use them and they really feed the bees. Bees love calendula, and also just about everything we've mentioned.
Excellent. So, what are your favorites that you grow in your garden?
Well, in our trial garden, where we evaluate new varieties and then grow out samples of all the seeds that we buy in to pack it up to make sure that they're true to type and have good germination. I grow lots and lots of different kinds of nasturtiums because they're the easiest edible flowers to use. I like to throw them in if I make a pasta with lots of vegetables. I'll throw in some petals or use salads or grated egg dishes. I like to make nasturtium vinegar, which is
Mm-hmm.
really beautiful and jewel tone, depending on the color of the nasturtium. And to do that, you just gather a bunch of flowers, and they bloom readily and for a long time
Mm-hmm.
in a mason quart jar. And then you add vinegar. I like to use rice vinegar because it's very neutral. And you heat the vinegar to till it's hot but not pretty warm, and then you pour it over the flowers and let them steep in for about 2 weeks, and then pour out the jewel tone, really pretty, lightly flavored vinegar. That's a fun one to do.
Wow.
What a great idea.
It sounds beautiful
Yeah,
too.
it does.
You'd have to have a special little flask on the table to show it off, when people come over.
Yeah, so you can make coral colored, bright lemon, orange, all the different colors of the petals transfer easily to the vinegar.
My husband started doing something with our nasturtiums that kind of blew my mind. But David, he's always experimenting. He's got a PhD in microbiology. So he went out on the nasturtiums, and we had quite a lot of them growing up over a trellis. And he picked the seed pods and made capers out of them. And so
Yeah,
I thought that was really cool. So have you done that as well, or can you talk about that?
it's certainly possible to do. Yes, it's definitely a caper alternative.
Hmm. I will mention that to him. He's also a doctor, so I'm sure he's not storing them up for anything diabolical, but
Let's hope not.
anyway, they do look pretty though in a jar. I will say that. And it's kind of cool to just look up on the shelf and see them up there for decor too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so tell us, when people go ahead and want to plant these seeds, and if they want to go ahead and buy some, I'll have your website up so that they can get your website. So, when do you recommend starting to plant these flowers? Do they have to wait till the temperature's above a certain, like 50 degrees, or what do you recommend for success?
Yes, I think in general, most of the things we've talked about, you want to wait till the temperature is consistently above 50 in the 50s at night to plant them.
Okay,
Oh,
at night, not in the daytime,
yeah.
because
Well, it can be nice and warm in the day, but it'll still be, if it goes down to 48 at night, they're not going to do anything.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And then you run the risk, at least where we live, the birds love to eat all the seeds
The
if you put them
rabbits.
out too
Yeah.
early and you don't have the right coverage for things. So yeah, that's good advice. Now tell us,
Yeah.
the
Okay.
calendula cookies that you're advertising, like one of the recipes you share. Is that hard to make, and how does that go over with your guests when you serve calendula cookies?
Well, they're really pretty and something a little different. They're nice butter cookies, so they go over
Oh,
well.
that
I
sounds
But
good.
love
our
butter cookies.
website, I think one of the most popular recipes we have is for a lavender shortbread.
Ooh.
You like lavender, that might be one you want to try, and that recipe's on our website. So that's another favorite that I find I make often.
Hmm.
And I do keep jars of lavender and rose flavored sugar, and I make those vinegars. So I think, and I add nasturtiums to a lot of salads. They're very nice.
Hmm.
If you've grilled shrimp or salmon, decorate them with lavender. Remember, it tastes like a sweet watercressy flavor, and it goes really well with those with shrimp and salmon, those kinds of things. So
Hmm.
beautiful to decorate a platter with grilled salmon. But they're also really good with shrimp or chopped up with a cream cheese spread to make it more colorful. Or if you cook zucchini or yellow squash to add some. So there's lots of things you can do. And also another edible flower is squash blossoms.
Hmm. They're delicious too.
You can take the male blossoms, which are the ones that don't have a swelled up shape below the flower. Those are the males. You can pick those and pull out the stamens in the middle and then stuff them with any ravioli filling
Mm.
and baste them with oil and roast them just till they're hot, heated through, and they're really good too.
Gosh, that sounds delicious.
Yeah, beautiful and delicious.
Yeah, exactly. You could really show off with that.
Yeah.
I love that idea. I'll have to try that for sure.
Yeah, you've given us some really great ideas.
So, we got just a couple more minutes here before we have to wrap up, Renee. So, in doing all of these beautiful things with flowers and herbs, do you often just pick them and put them in a vase for the aromatic essence in the house, or what do you recommend for that?
Well, nasturtiums are not really vase flowers because they don't have long stems.
Hmm.
You can certainly pick bachelor buttons, they don't have a lot of fragrance. Lavender is lovely to pick when it's just starting to open and then bunch up in big bunches with and rubber band them, hang them upside down off a coat hanger with paper clip to dry in a cool, dry place. And then you can use bunches of dried lavender as decor, and those are really lovely. Um, let's see. Calendulas you can pick. Long stem, big, tall marigolds you can pick. Let's see, I'm just glancing down at my list here. So I don't think there's many of the edible flowers that you would necessarily. Roses, of course, are lovely vase
Oh,
flowers.
lovely.
So maybe that's helpful. Dianthus, by the way, we did not talk about those. Dianthus, the whole family are edible and have a clove-like scent, and
Mm,
therefore really lovely with baked goods as decorations. Um, you know, dianthus or carnations is what I'm talking about, the whole
mhm.
family. Again, before you eat a flower, make sure you know where it was grown and how it was grown.
Right.
I'm not sure that I would definitely not advise you to just buy a six pack of flowers, uh, plants, and then eat them because they may have been treated with growth regulators or pesticides. So I am talking about flowers that you grew from seed or were organically grown. I want to really emphasize that because that's important.
That is super important. And just to kind of reinforce that idea, if you have a lawn service at your house and you know that they're going to be coming by and spraying pesticides, putting out chemicals, or anything like that, anything that you plan on eating, you want to make sure they are in an area where they do not get contaminated,
Hmm.
because that can make you very sick.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
nobody wants that. So be very aware of the surroundings. Make sure that when you plant your seeds, the soil is nice and warm at night. It has to be above 50 degrees consistently, at least a week or two, so that you can go out and plant your seeds and make sure that they're going to thrive in their environment. But also make sure that if you have a lawn service and they're going to come out and put chemicals down, that those chemicals are not getting in the beds where you have the flowers or you have the herbs or anything that's going to go into your body. And then I would also say Renee has amazing seeds, and I have bought seeds from her. She also has some really unique kind of seeds that are hard to find. And I highly recommend that you take a look, especially if you're a gardener who likes a little bit of a challenge or you want to grow something different. You just don't go down to your regular nursery or the Ace Hardware store, right? And just buy whatever's at the grocery store, take it home and plop it in. But if you want to have a really good experience, look up Renee's Garden, take the website here, and also you have social media too, Renee, so people can regularly contact you through social media too for tips and photographs and all kinds of cool stuff, right?
Yes, all the photos on our website have been taken in our trail gardens, which are here in Northern California, but also we have a trail garden in New York. So all the varieties, I'm sorry, Vermont, and all our varieties are tested for cold climates. But we have ordinary varieties too. Our emphasis is on vegetables that are really taste good, and we're oriented toward people who like to cook from the garden.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to encourage anybody who's got a chemical service for a lawn to look around because, frankly, a lot of really major golf courses and other places that grow a lot of turf really don't use chemicals anymore. There's so many more organic alternatives that are sustainable and really work. I don't think you really have to have a chemicalized lawn. You want someplace you can roll around and your pets and kids can really enjoy without worry. And it is possible now. It's much easier to garden organically than it even was 6 years ago.
It is, and that's a very good point. And I am actually trying out some new organic treatments this year, which I've just learned about that are now available here in the Midwest. So I'm looking forward to that because they actually enhance the soil and build the soil. So it's a very good tip.
Yes, we grow out 350 varieties a year in our trail gardens. We've been using organic techniques for 10, 15 years. So it's easy and possible to do because it's a much more mature industry and there's lots of great pest controls, etc., especially if you want to encourage pollinators. Pollinators, you cannot use chemicals and support bees.
Right.
I guess what my message is, it's not all or nothing. It's perfectly possible to have a wonderful garden without using toxic materials.
Thank you so much for sharing all your experience and your time with us today. You have just been so generous, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Renee.
Sure, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy.
Thank you. Have a beautiful weekend.
Thank you.
Renee's Edible Flowers. These seeds can be bought online from Renee. You can get dahlias, hyssop, violas, nasturtiums, hollyhocks, cornflowers, calendula, borage, and marigolds. Check it out on Renee's Garden. And she's also got a cookbook if you want to learn how to cook fabulously and impress your friends. So thank you for watching the Rebel Podcast today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Edible Flowers with Renee. And now take that knowledge, show off to your friends and family, and go and glow. Watch and listen to the Rebel Podcast on Cox Channel 22, on YouTube, and all places where podcasts are shared.